Alright, welcome to chapter 14 as we continue to build our knowledge of Hebrew. This chapter begins on page 81 in your textbook, and we're going to get in this chapter, start to get into the exceptions to the rules with a major category that we'll spend a lot of time on through the rest of the course, which is weak roots. So we'll spend some time in this semester filling out our understanding of which roots are going to be weaker, and we'll get into that. And then next semester, as we learn different patterns, we'll learn how these different weaknesses show up in the different verb patterns. So here's our sort of plan for the lecture. We're talking about verbs, so we'll go over our paradigms for us. We'll also review guttural rules because these will be important as we get into weak roots. Then we'll introduce weak roots, and we'll talk about two specifically, those gutturals in the first root position and when the aleph is in the third root position. And we'll go over vocab and we'll do some practice. So here we go. So let's review our cal perfect and imperfect paradigms. Y'all have been doing a really good job with these. So this is just for review, and you can pause the video now and go through it on your own just to make sure you got it down. So we have katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti, katalu, kataltem, katalten, and katalnu. That's our perfect paradigm. Remember, we're translating this as completed action, and so it's either a stative present or most often a past completed action. Our imperfect, that's our either future or ongoing. It's non-completed action. So that'll help us as we get into further into Hebrew. So the cal imperfect paradigm here, we have yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol, yiktalu, tiktolna, tiktalu, tiktolna, niktol. All right. So again, y'all are doing a really good job as we put in different root consonants into these different positions of spotting the different conjugations. So that's been good. All right, the second thing to review before we get into the content of this chapter is our guttural rules. So we've gone through these as we went through the earlier chapters of the course, but just to remind us, these are the three guttural rules. First, gutturals never take a dagesh, and so we tend to see compensatory lengthening happening as a consequence of this when a normal sort of construction would ask a guttural to take a dagesh, you often get the dagesh rejected and some compensatory lengthening. We also talked about virtual doubling as something that happened where particularly hays and chetz just act as if they've doubled and the dagesh goes away, but you don't also get compensatory lengthening. So gutturals never take dagesh. They rarely take vocal shavaz. So this is something we're going to see affect our verb paradigms, and they prefer chatef patak or chatef segol. Chatef patak by far is the most preferred one among the gutturals. Chatef segol makes its appearance every now and then, but they don't really like the shorter vocal shava. They prefer a slightly longer pronunciation with these chatefs. And the third guttural rule is they prefer to be introduced by A-class vowels, and this is largely why I said chatef patak show up the most, is because gutturals like to be introduced by A-class vowels. And remember, that means that we're talking about the vowel that comes before. So we've had the root shema, and in its imperfect form, we should have a cholim here, but because, so if we had like our 3ms imperfect form, tell you what, I'll do this in black, that the guttural, the pressure it's putting on is the vowel that's coming right before it. So normally we would have a cholim here in our sort of standard paradigm, but because we have this guttural, the ayin, it wants to be introduced by an A-class vowel, so we get this, we get the patak there as the theme vowel. So that is an instance of the guttural preferring to be introduced by an A-class vowel. So if we remember these three rules, that's going to help us a lot as we get into these weak roots. All right, so we're talking about weak roots, so what are they? Basically, as we get into verbs in Hebrew, and this will show up in other sort of grammatical terms as well, but it's primarily we're going to be dealing with verbs. We're dealing with two kinds of roots. Strong roots are our friends. They follow the standard paradigm that we're learning in this class, and so that paradigm that was up above with cal perfect and imperfect, the vowel pointing is all going to be the same. So here are three examples of standard strong roots. We have katal, zachartem, and imlechu. So these are just examples of, we have three root consonants, triconsonantal roots, and they are going to follow the standard paradigm. And then there are certain constructions which we're going to call weak. And whereas strong are our friends, weak roots are our extra grace required friends. So they're still our friends because it's Hebrew and we like Hebrew, but it's going to take us some extra time with them to kind of, you gotta deal with little idiosyncrasies and things like that. So these are going to vary from the standard paradigm that we've been learning in different ways. And the different ways are going to depend on what kind of weakness they have. So we have sort of two markers to classify a weakness of a root. There's the location of the weakness and then the type of weakness we're talking about. So when I say location, I mean which root consonant are we dealing with? Are we dealing, because remember Hebrew generally is triconsonantal system, so we learned katal, which means to kill, zachar, melech, things like that. So normally we have three root consonants in the root of the verb, and so we classify the position of the consonant in relation to those three. And so one way to classify the weakness in a verb in terms of its location is which consonant are we talking about. So first consonant is the first one you come along, reading right to left in Hebrew. So in katal it'd be this kof here, in zachar it'd be the zayin, in melech it would be the mem. The second root position is the next consonant you interact with. So the tate here, the kaf here, the lamed here. Oh, and then we have the third root position that's supposed to be 3. It looks like I just added it to 4. So that would be the final root consonant. So the lamed here, the resh here, and the kaf here at the end. So in Futato, this is the phraseology that we're going to learn, is first, second, and third. And again, that relates to which consonant reading right from left in terms of the root of this word. However, Hebrew grammarians don't always agree what to call things. So I'm going to teach you another way to identify the root, the weakness in roots. We're not going to use this in class as much, but as you move on in your Hebrew study, potentially in exegesis, depending on students who are in the class, the professor, they may use this other way, which is to basically name these root positions, first, second, and third, a different consonant. So they use the root pa'al, and as we learn different patterns, we'll come back to this root. Whereas we're going to learn, for example, in this chapter, one guttural weaknesses, so that's when you have a guttural in the first root position. Another way to classify that is to say the pay guttural. So it's in the pay position. And similarly, we're going to learn two root weaknesses, those that are in the second position, while others ways would be, say, the ayin haze or something like that, and then the lamed alepphs, as we learn in this chapter, the third aleph. So whenever you have an aleph in the third root position, another textbook will say, well, you'd call that the lamed position because it's taken from this verb meaning that's pa'al, which I think is meaning to open. So we're going to be using 1, 2, and 3, and that's what the terminology we're going to use in this class, but I will, as we go through, I'll remind you of this other system so that you're equipped to have all those fun Hebrew conversations at the cocktail parties you're going to be attending. Okay, so the location is one way to classify a weakness in a Hebrew triconsonantal root. The other is the type. So not just where it is, but what kind of weakness, because that's gonna tell us how it varies from the standard. So gutturals are going to be issues for us. Why? Because gutturals have special rules. We just went through the 3 guttural rules. So those are going to come into play as we learn these. Noons, I've already talked to you about how noons are kind of a weak sound in our language, but as well as in Hebrew, and so we'll learn those in the next chapter. A hey, so that the consonant hey, when it shows up in certain positions, it causes problems. And then later in the class, we'll learn these other two types of weaknesses. These tend to be just really tricky, and so it's a good thing we wait to the end. Geminate roots, you've already learned that the word amam, which we've learned the root am for people. Well, it's actually a geminate root, amam. And so when you have this doubling of the second and third position consonants, that causes issue with verbs. And then hollow verbs are when you have two root consonants, and then you will have a long vowel in between them. So again, we'll learn those later, but we classify weak roots by their location in the triconsonantal sort of root concept, so first, second, third position, and the type. So we'd have, well, we're going to learn one guttural in this lecture, and third alepphs and things like that. So that's how we're going to classify these. Okay, so in this chapter, like I said, we're going to deal with first gutturals and third alepphs. So let's tackle our first gutturals first. So I thought just to kind of compile what are exactly the roots that we've learned so far that we're talking about with one gutturals. Well, here they are. Remember, our gutturals are aleph, ayin, hey, and chet, and sometimes resh tags along. In this instance, we're going to be dealing mostly with these gutturals. So we've learned amad, which is to stand. We've learned avad, which is to serve. We've learned avar, which is to go across or transgress. We've learned chata, which is to sin. Chazak, to be strong. Amar, which is to speak. And halach, which is to walk, go, or come. So this halach has a first hey, so it's a first guttural. It's going to follow some special rules, though, so we're going to wait to find out about those for a few chapters. But so we're primarily dealing with these verbs here. These are the roots that we've learned so far. And again, we've got this guttural in the first position in all of them, right? So we have an ayin, 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 chet, chet, aleph, hey. So that's why we're talking about these, because it causes some issues, all related to the three special guttural rules. Primarily, what we're going to see as we go through the perfect and the imperfect here is rule number 2, which is they prefer hatefs, and rule number 3, which is they prefer A-class vowels. We're going to see those show up here as we go through this paradigm. And again, we're going over these because these are a little different. So to go through the perfect conjugation, the only place we see difference is in the second masculine and feminine plural down here. But because here in the 3MS of the CalPerfect, amad, we're not asking this guttural to have a vocal shava or anything like that, so it's fine. Same with the third feminine singular, second masculine singular, all these, this guttural isn't being asked to do anything it doesn't particularly like, and so it's okay. It's a standard paradigm. Again, as I said, here in the second masculine plural, that's the one difference we see in the in these first guttural CalPerfect paradigms, is we are normally asking the first root consonant to carry a vocal shava, right? That we have something like, well, we use zachar, we have vocal shava. Normally we have this zachartem, right? Where we have a vocal shava here. Well, again, a guttural doesn't like to do that. It's already not making a whole lot of sound. It's asking the person to reach back in their throat, and so it wants to make that movement worth it, and so it goes for the chatef. And so instead of this zachartem, we get amadtem, amadtem. And so it's a slightly longer time to say this, this word. But again, this is the one difference, and we're talking about recognition here. I'm not talking about you constructing your own sentences or verbs. So this is just the ability to say, that looks a little different than what I'm used to. Why is that so? Okay, there's a guttural here. And so That's why it makes sense that this is a chatef. I know it's a guttural, so it's going to prefer chatef when actually we're talking about vocal shavas. So with that kind of thinking, you're able to get back to the standard paradigm with a vocal shava under here. Same thing under the second feminine plural, because we normally ask it to carry a vocal shava. And then amadnu is still the same. Now notice throughout this that our suffixes stay the same. And remember I told you that the consonantal elements of our prefixes and then both elements of our suffixes aren't going to change as we go through the course. Well, this is what you're seeing. So even if you're, no matter that this is a little different, you're still able to parse it as a second masculine plural and a second feminine plural. Okay, so our perfect conjugation in the cal isn't affected a whole lot. Our imperfect, we do see some changes. So, normally we have yizkor, right? We have the yod prefix. A hirek is normally the vowel that introduces the first root consonant, and then we have a shava here, which is normally silent, but the gutturals are going to force these two changes, where instead of the hirek, it wants to be introduced by an A-class vowel, and then instead of the shava, even though it would be silent, it wants to change it to a chatef. So we're going to see that throughout these paradigms. And so instead of yizkor, we get ya'amod, ya'amod. And then we get ta'amod, and ta'amod, and ta'amdi. And then we get e'emod, and ya'amdu, and ta'amodna, and ta'amdu, and ta'amodna, and na'amod. Excuse me. Boy, that was a mouthful. So we saw that here, that the change to the chatef, and we're putting pressure on the prefix to introduce it with a patak. Where we get a little different is here we already have the segol, and for some reason this segol stays the same, and the guttural has to compromise. So instead of getting its chatef patak, it matches the short vowel before it, and so it just gets a chatef segol. And then we have one more change here in our third masculine plural and then second masculine plural, having to do with the way that these end with the long vowels. For some reason these are different, and I wish I could give you a really insightful answer, and I just don't have one as to why it's different. But the pataks here are full-on pataks, not chatef pataks. Futano makes a little note on the bottom of page 82. Verbs with patak as the theme vowel are vocalized like yechezak. And so I wanted to give you a full paradigm here. So remember, chazak means to be strong or to be strengthened. So these tend to be stative verbs that are showing up that have that patak theme vowel. And so we get yechezak, tehezak. Sorry, that wasn't guttural enough. Tehezak, tehezak, tehezaki, echezak, yechezku, tehezachna, techezku, techezakna, and nechezak. Boy, that cleared my throat. So again, what we're seeing is we're seeing changes because of the guttural rules. And in this case, with already the patak here, for some reason we didn't want to have that many ah sounds, and so we get this preference for the segols that we see throughout. Though, again, like this, the third masculine plural and the second masculine plural, we don't get the chatefs here. So, here's all the notes. The gutturals prefer chatef patak or chatef segol, where the shava is in the standard paradigm of the imperfect. So that's what we saw, the changes. They prefer to be introduced by A-class vowels, so that pressures the prefix vowel to become a patak in most of the imperfect forms, though we saw that it doesn't work here with the first common singular, maybe because you already have another guttural that's throwing a temper tantrum. In the third masculine and second masculine plural, the guttural is in a closed, unaccented syllable, which must have a short vowel. Therefore, we get patak instead of the chatef patak. That's my one attempt to figure that one out. Now right now, you only know one pattern, which is the cal. and it's got this standard pointing. And because you only know one pattern, many of you, you're just able to, when you come to a parsing chart, you write cal in the first box, and then you point all the way down and you say, look, I know it's all cal. And then you can focus on the prefixes and any suffixes to figure out your parsing, which is great. The only problem is that things are going to get more complicated next semester when we get new patterns. And remember, as I've said, the new patterns change the vowel pointing. So conjugation tends to deal with prefixes and suffixes, but patterns change vowel pointing. And so, yes, you don't stress out right now, and I want you to continue to parse things based on the prefixes and the suffixes, but I want you to notice the changes. Notice that, okay, probably it's best for you to be able to articulate this. Okay, I see that normally this would be a hirek and a shava, but because it's a first guttural, it's going to patak, patak here in this third masculine plural. So this is going to take a little bit more time, but as you parse something that's different, please articulate why the difference has happened. And in this case, you'll say, okay, I've got a difference here from the standard paradigm, the hirek, shava, cholam, because I'm in a first guttural. First guttural weaknesses do these things. They change it to a patak under the prefix and a chatef, patak under the first root consonant. Or here, okay, I'm dealing with a one guttural that has a patak theme vowel, and so I change to chatef, sagol, and sagol. Again, you're not having to construct these sentences, but if you hone the skill of articulating why a change has happened, then next semester, when patterns start to change the vowel pointing under things, you'll be much better equipped to still be able to parse and not get super confused when gutturals show up and all these different things. So put in a little work now will help you a lot next semester. So in our online conversations, I'll probably say, oh, tell me why that is different, or what is different about this verb. And I want you to be able to say, well, the vowel under the prefix has been changed because gutturals prefer A-class vowels, and the vowel under the first root consonant has become a chatef patak instead of a normal shava because it's a one guttural. Something like that, because again, that will sharpen your skills that you'll need for next semester. So our one gutturals, they are making changes, but in in terms of like passing the quiz this week, you're still able to parse them because you have the prefix there and suffixes there. It's not as crazy of a thing. Similarly with our third alepphs, we're going to see changes that happen that aren't incredibly crazy, but they do make some changes, and then they make a little bit more changes. Well, they make some different changes from our one gutturals. So what are the aleph roots that we've learned? Well, all of these come from this last chapter's vocab. Bara, to create, chata, to sin, matzah, to find, nasa, to lift, or carry, or pardon, or forgive, kara, to call out, or to read. So these right now are our third aleph roots. And here we can see the changes. So here's the rule in terms of third aleph. Whenever an aleph closes a syllable, whenever its job would be to close a syllable and therefore have a silent shava under it, it likes to quiesce. It quiesces, which means it acts as if it's not even there. So likely an ayin in primitive Hebrew did have some sound associated with it, something that changed it, even though we're pronouncing it as silent, whereas an aleph did not have any sound associated with it. Because what we see in these different situations is the aleph just acts as if it's not even there. And so therefore, if it's acting and the word is treating it, and remember this is about pronunciation, the Masoretic scribes are not out to give you a headache, they're out to represent the pronunciation at the time that they were putting vowels on the text and things like that. Once you have an aleph quiescing and acting like it's not there, well, that changes syllabification, and therefore it changes vowels, right? Because things can go from a closed, it's supposed to close the syllable, but now it's not, and so then it goes to an open syllable, that changes things. The patak that would normally be introducing the aleph lengthens to a kametz, to represent this change in syllabification. Again, we pronounce these the same, but it's likely that there was a slight difference in pronunciation that would tell the listener, okay, this is the root that I'm dealing with. And that patak, by the way, is showing up particularly in the imperfect. It's already changed it from its holum because it's a guttural and wants to be introduced by an A-class vowel. The dagesh in the suffixes of the perfect conjugation is lost. And then we'll see, we'll get these sigols in the imperfect here. So let's go through this. Our perfect is matzah. So here's what we're seeing. Normally we would have katal, right? Where you have kamets and patak, but our aleph is saying, well, just treat as if I'm not here, and so the patak lengthens to a kamets there. So we have matzah, we have matzah, matzata, and here we see that there's no dagesh. Remember that normally we would have katalta, with a dagesh here in the tav, but and that's a weak dagesh because it's preceded by the sound of a consonant. But now this tav is not preceded by the sound of a consonant because aleph is quiescing. It's preceded by the sound of this vowel, and so if it were to have the dagesh, it would become a strong dagesh because vowels invigorate it, and so it goes away. So that's not too crazy of a difference. You can still see the that as a suffix on our triconsonantal root. Oh, no, I want this. There we go. The second feminine singular gets a little more difficult, so we get matzat. Normally we would have the shava under here, but that drops away as well, and so we get this ending that we have to recognize as normally a second feminine singular ending that would have a dagesh and the shava there. So matzat. Matzati, again, same thing happening with a lack of dagesh there in the tav, where now it's preceded by the sound of a vowel, so it drops away. And matza'u, we get metzatem, metzaten, and matzanu, excuse me. So for these, the plurals, not a whole lot of changes from the from our standard paradigm other than the lengthening of the kamets and the loss of dagesh here. So again, all of this is because the aleph is just saying act as if I'm not here, and so the verb has to respond accordingly. So again, not incredibly hard to parse because you still have the suffixes there. Probably the third feminine singular might be the hardest, just recognizing it as a verb and not a feminine noun. And the second feminine singular, figuring out this tav ending is supposed to be the tav with the shava under it. Those are probably the most difficult out of these. And just remember that aleph is quiescing, and that's why it's different. So again, being able to articulate what is different and why is it different is very helpful. Okay, in our imperfect, we get yimtza, and so the difference here is that you get the kamets instead of normally you get the holum, but because this is a third guttural, it's going to change it to an A-class vowel. So normally it would be a patak, as we see over here with a shalach. We've already talked about that in chapter 11 when we introduced imperfect verbs, the imperfect conjugation. But so here we get this lengthening of the patak to a kamets because the aleph is quiescing. Timtza, timtsa'i. This is standard pointing here in second feminine singular because we get the shava there, the shortening of that. Emtza, yimtsa'u. Here's probably the trickiest one of the third aleph imperfect conjugation. Timtsena, excuse me. Timtsena. So here, instead of getting its A-class vowel, it gets a sigol. Again, I wish I had a really good reason for you. I don't. But the sigol changes. So you still have your prefix, you still have your suffix in order to be able to parse it correctly. So not incredibly difficult to fill out the parsing chart, but being able to articulate, okay, this is different from the cholam that I would expect. Because it's a third aleph, it becomes this sigol. Timtseu, and then blah, 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 timtsena, same conjugation as the third feminine plural, and then nimtza. All right. So, and I provided here for you the third gutturals. These didn't get a whole lecture. We just slipped it in chapter 11 to say, oh, by the way, whenever you've got a third guttural, instead of the holum theme vowel, it's going to become a patak. So you can see how that's different there, which is the compensatory lengthening has happened because aleph is just acting as if it's not even there, and so the verb responds accordingly, and then we get the sigol here instead of the patak in these forms. Okay, so again, you're just having to recognize these, and right now it's not super crazy, and now you may be sitting at home saying, what are you talking about? This is super crazy. But what I'm saying is that you still have prefixes and suffixes that you can recognize. You still have all your root consonants to go back to your vocab and to be able to understand the meaning. Again, what will become tricky later next semester is when we're dealing with different verb patterns that then change the vowel pointing. And so that's why I'm saying put in the time now to be able to tell me there's a sigol here because it's a third aleph. That's what's changed. Or there's no shavah here and no dagish because it's a third aleph. If you're able to do that now, it'll pay off next semester. All right, our vocab is on a page in your textbook, 84. And I'm going to make sure that I've spelled these correctly so I don't continue to throw you off. We have bacha, which is to cry or weep. You can think of bacha, cha, cha, of crying. And I'm blanking now, but there's a place in Scripture that talks about the Valley of Weeping, and this is its name bacha. Bana is to build. Gala is to reveal or go away. Gala, something like that. Chaza is to see a vision. You could use chaza as well, but those would probably be confusing. So gala is to reveal or go away. Chaza is to see a vision. This word happens in the prophets a lot, where some of the oracles of the prophets are actually called a vision. And I believe Isaiah 1:1 calls it the vision of Isaiah ben Amoz. Then we have chala, which is to finish or to cease. This verb is, I believe, used at the end of the creation account as the Lord rests. We have naga, which is to touch or to hurt. Nagash, which is to approach. Nasa is to start out. So this is where we need to be clear. We're not just listening to the word, but we're also looking at the consonants, because you already have learned a nasa, which is to lift, carry, pardon, or forgive. Sorry, that's with an aleph there. My bad. And so don't get nasa to start out mixed up with nasa, which is to pick up. And there's two completely different consonants in there. Or to lift or carry or pardon or forgive or whatever. Asa is to make or to do, to create. And then ra'ah is to see or to know. Ra'ah, to see or to know. I think, so two that I tend to get mixed up are these two, naga and nagash. If you can think of like a cry of pain here of like naga, then maybe that'll help you think of getting hurt. Whereas nagash, then maybe you can differentiate enough to approach or things like that. All right, let's do a little bit of practice here. Sorry, I'm having some back issues here. So here you have Ga'alu, Anashe, Ha'ir, Hatovim, et Ha'am. So let's parse this verb. This, I can see the three root consonants here. with a suffix, so that means we're in Cal, because we're always in Cal right now. Cal perfect. The shurek suffix is a third common plural. Ga'al, which means to redeem. So this would be they, because it's third common plural. Redeemed or claimed. They redeemed. Well, who did? Anashe ha'ir. Anashe ha'ir. So here we have the tsere yod, which is our masculine plural construct marker. And so that means that this word is supposed to be anashim. Anashim. Do I know that word? Yes, it's men. Anashim is men, but then it's a masculine plural construct, so men of. Ha'ir is the city. So this would be the men of the city. And then we have an adjective, hatovim, hatovim. So this is a masculine plural definite adjective that tries to look for, okay, which of these nouns is it describing attributively, because it's following them. It's following the nouns. So masculine plural, well, ha'ir is not masculine plural, it's actually feminine singular. But anashe is a masculine plural noun. So this is the good. So this would be the good men of the city did what? They redeemed. The good men of the city redeemed. Our definite direct object marker here, ha'am, is the people. So this would be the good men of the city redeemed the people. And here we can see the effect of the aleph as a guttural here in the center of the word, that we've got a chatef instead of this vocal shabab. I think I took this from your, practice exercise on page 86. So the next one here, matzata et hazahav chatachor beveit ha'isha hatova. So let's take it in turn. So matzata, here we have a suffix that we recognize as a second masculine singular of the Cal perfect paradigm. Matzah is to find, so a second masculine singular would be you. Matzah, and the perfect would be found. You found. What did you find? Hazahav. Hazahav is the gold. Zahav is the gold. Zahavs and zahavnots is the gold. Chatachor. This is an adjective. It's definite and it comes after a noun. So this is its head noun. It's describing this is a pure. So the pure gold. There is our preposition in, and it's not definite. And then we have veit. So this is house, but normally it's spelled like this, right? Bayit. Normally it has what's called a diphthong, which is the patak, yod, hirek, this kind of construction. But it's changed to the tsere yod here because it's in the construct state. So house of ha'isha is the woman or the wife. And because this is definite, so we have a noun in construct state, and there is an absolute noun, it's definite, so the whole thing is definite. So the house of the woman, chatova, tov is an adjective, it's feminine singular here, it's definite, and so it is describing this definite feminine singular word, so the good woman. So this would be, you found the pure gold in the house. So even though this preposition doesn't have a patak and a dagesh here, well, that's because this word didn't have the definite article on it, though it is definite because it's in construct relationship with a definite absolute noun. So in the house of the good woman. You found the pure gold in the house of the good woman. Chatati anochi al Adonai. Chatati, so here we have a suffix we can recognize, the tav hirek yod. It's a Cal perfect first common singular suffix. Chata means to sin, so I sinned. Then we have this nominative personal pronoun, so this is I again, for emphasis perhaps, I myself sinned. Al is on or upon, or it can mean against. And then this is the divine name. So this is where you would say Adonai, and I prefer just writing Lord here. And so this would be I myself sinned against the Lord, or sinned on the Lord, or something like that. So I myself sinned against the Lord. And again, we see the difference here with the third aleph quiescing, which changes the dagesh, just as up here the third aleph quiesced, which we had the compensatory lengthening under the tzadeh, and we lost the dagesh here. Bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. This is almost Genesis 1:1. Bara is a Cal perfect 3ms, to create. So he created, but then we get a noun here, and so we have God created, and then the definite direct object marker. This is telling what is receiving the action of the creation. God created et hashamayim, the heavens. Ve is and, et, definite direct object marker, haaretz, the earth. There you go. You can almost, I think, is it next chapter you'll learn the final piece of vocab you need to translate Genesis 1:1. So this is God created the heavens and the earth. Yeah, and then you can see that what's different here about this verb is the compensatory lengthening under the second root consonant because the aleph has quiesced. Number 5 here, Yikreu kol b'nei hakochanim el ha'elohim betoch beit Adonai. I guess it'd be, yeah, that should actually have a dagesh there. There you go. So here we have yikreu. So we have a yod prefix. This tells me it's, because I only know Cal, it's imperfect, and it's third masculine. The question is, it's singular or plural? I go to the end and there's a shurek, so it's plural. Cal imperfect third masculine plural from kara, to call or to read, to call out or to read. So a third masculine plural would be they, perhaps are calling. Kol is all, every, or whole. B'nei is the masculine plural construct. See, we have the Tzera Yod of Ben, which is son. So sons, all sons of, and this kol with the makef is telling us it's in construct as well. So all of, sons of, hakochanim. So this is a masculine plural, definite now from kohen. So this is the priests. So we might have all of the sons of the priests here are calling. El is our independent preposition meaning to or toward, to ha-Elohim, to the God, or perhaps God. Betoch is another independent preposition which means within. Beit, again, same thing, it's bayit in a construct form. You get the diphthong because it's not accented, the accent shifts away. It takes too long for the speaker to say bayit, and we want to get to the accent on the next word, so it just becomes beit. Adonai is the Lord. So this would be temple of the Lord. And so it's a definite, it's a personal name, and so it becomes definite. So this is all of the sons of the priests are calling to God within the temple of the Lord.